Quite often, for a long period of time, I was put on all different medications that were supposed to help me sleep. At one point, one doctor put me on a medication that was so strong that subsequent doctors have had to test me for organ damage.
And so let's start back in your childhood. Where did you grow up? What was your childhood like? Siblings?
Okay, so I was born in Milwaukee. I have one sibling. It's an older brother who's a couple years older than me. My parents have been married for 50 some years. So I grew up in Milwaukee, but throughout my childhood, we moved around a lot. So I lived throughout the Midwest and Michigan, Indiana, and then eventually moved up to Minnesota where I went to college. And then I moved down to the Twin Cities area for law school.
Okay. And what did you do for your undergrad degree?
I was a psychology major and a criminal justice minor, originally thinking I wanted to be a police officer, and then needed some extra credits, took a paralegal certificate, and decided going into law school is the way to go for me.
Okay. And when did your illness begin? What were the first signs and how old were you? What was going on?
So it was a very gradual onset for me. So I would say it probably started in 2014 when I was about 43. What I first noticed was just I was getting more and more tired, and going to work was getting harder because I was more and more exhausted. Um, and then as we got into like 2015, it got to the point where it was I wasn't getting restorative sleep to the point that I wasn't able to really function very well at work. Like, I don't think they noticed it at work, but I noticed for myself I was putting in so much more extra effort because I was so exhausted. And my sleep quality was so poor at that point, and it just kept declining and declining. And so in 2015 is when I really started going and seeking medical help for that to figure out what was going on.
And what was that experience like?
That was a lot of doctor visits with a lot of different kinds of doctors. It was really frustrating. One, it was expensive. And also going to the doctor when I now know I have a compromised immune system, I kept getting sick all the time that year just from being in doctor's offices all the time. But the biggest thing really was just nobody ever knew anything of what to do, and they just kept throwing out guesses, and these guesses sometimes were quite harmful. Quite often, for a long period of time, I was put on all different medications that were supposed to help me sleep. At one point, one doctor put me on a medication that was so strong that subsequent doctors have had to test me for organ damage to see if that medication, they said basically you were given 8 times the strength that we would give a large guy, as opposed to somebody of your size. And I was also given just, go and spend 12 hours a day outside and you'll be fine. Well, I don't know who can spend 12 hours a day outside in the sunlight and be fine. And if you live in Minnesota, you definitely cannot do that. We just don't have that amount of sunshine here. I was also sent to cognitive behavioral therapy from one of the top medical facilities in Minnesota. I was told to exercise more, which is something that I actually used to be a very avid fitness buff. So, when I heard that initially, I thought, oh, this is great. If I could get back to where I was, because at this point I had stopped exercising, if I could get back to where I was, that would be wonderful. But it turns out that was actually the worst advice I had gotten.
So you say you were a fitness buff, and I know you mentioned when we were chatting earlier that you're a were a mountain climber.
Yes.
Tell me a bit about that.
So in about 2005 or 6, I decided I really wanted to get into working out. I thought I had a side job that I was working out because I was working in the liquor store and lifting kegs of beer all the time. And or not kegs, cases, and realized, you know what, this really isn't working out. I'm not getting buff. So I joined a gym. I eventually quit the gym and started doing some really intense workouts, some of the most intense ones that are out there. And then wanted to go one step further with it. Okay, I can do all these great physical things, but what can I do with it? So I decided to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. I'd done some hiking and some climbing before, but never in my life had I climbed a mountain before, and went to Africa and summited Mount Kilimanjaro, which is 19,400 feet. Biggest accomplishment of my life in many ways.
Wow. Uh, and what was that experience like physically? I've had some friends go, and some of them weren't affected by the altitude, and others were really impacted.
It was really interesting. The group I went with had a mix of people from age 18 to 67. And the 18-year-old guy who was the buff guy that, you know, you think he's going to be making it up, he was sick on day one with altitude sickness, and he eventually had to be taken down on the day before we summited. Um, for me, it was really a challenge. There's a point a day before we summited that I got a migraine and got really sick. The altitude was getting to me. I was just sheer exhaustion. I mean, camping outside in extreme temperatures, because with Kilimanjaro, you start out in like a rainforest and you go through all the different climates, and you end up in basically a climate zone where everything is freezing, and you're basically winter camping. And it was just a lot for me and for my first experience. But made it up there is experience of a lifetime. It's something I'm so glad I did, because physically it's, I think, helped me with my illness, in the sense that, okay, if I can take on a huge challenge like that, having never done something like that before, I can take on other physical challenges to myself. But then also mentally as well, it was a huge mental achievement. Whenever something comes up that I'm challenged by or nervous about or something like that, I always think of, okay, if I can do that, I can do this. This is certainly much easier and much quicker. So it really was an experience of a lifetime, and seeing the culture was amazing as well too.
Wow. So it's like you say, it really in some ways prepared you for living with a chronic illness.
Yes, definitely.
So while you're going to all these doctors and you're being told to exercise and have cognitive behavioral therapy and all of these sort of psychological treatments, for lack of a better word, what were you thinking?
I really didn't know. I mean, I thought all I had was a sleeping disorder, because in the beginning, that's really mostly what it was just exhaustion. Um, so I went to the sleep clinic, and they gave me medications that they said were going to help me sleep. And I really just thought it was some sort of sleep condition that I had. But then in 2016, more symptoms started coming up, as far as memory loss, vision loss, um, swollen lymph nodes. I was getting, if I'd get sick with one thing, I'd get sick with multiple. It would make me susceptible to other things very quickly. It was kind of like, once I got a cold, it was a downhill. Um, my health went downhill very quickly. And things just kept piling up. It's like I went from what I thought was a sleeping situation to something that had so many more components to it that were all very new to me.
And so what's your doctor doing at this point?
Well, there are no doctors in Minnesota that treat myalgic encephalomyelitis. So um, at this point, I'm really not getting care specifically for my illness, because there simply is no one that I can go to here. I'm on a waiting list to go to Stanford University for care at this point.
Oh, sorry. I meant when you started to get much sicker back in 2016.
Oh,
What
okay.
was your doctor doing at that point?
Oh, okay. Well, my doctor basically told me that this is over her head. Um, so I ended up going to multiple other doctors, and basically they just rotated me around to different specialties. So I went to infectious disease, I went to rheumatology, I went to internal medicine. I went to all different types of doctors. I'm still seeing a neurologist for some issues related to that. But I just kept getting rotated around, and continually they weren't really finding anything they were saying, this is what's causing all your problems. It wasn't until I finally went to one clinic in Minnesota that diagnosed me with myalgic encephalomyelitis, or as I called it, chronic fatigue syndrome.
Mm-hmm. And so what was it like that day? What was that appointment like, getting that diagnosis?
To be honest, even though I didn't, well, I understood that there was no current cure for it. It honestly was kind of a relief, because I just gone through a year of trial and error and nobody knowing what's going on, and they're just kind of throwing things at the wall and seeing what's going to stick and work. So I kind of felt relieved in kind of a weird way to have like a name to it. But at that point, I really had no idea still what it was. So my relief was kind of short-lived until I did my own research.
And then what happened when you did your own research?
Well, I learned, I would say, a preliminary introduction of what it was like, and then I went to a 3-day course by a medical provider that talked all about, the strategies for minimizing relapses and managing the disease. And I thought, once again, okay, I'm in good shape. I've got all these strategies. But then I did further research, looked at some more authoritative resources, and realized that some of the protocols that they were telling me that I should do, such as exercising more, which initially I loved the thought of that, or cognitive behavioral therapy, were actually doing me more harm than good, and it actually caused a setback in my health.
How did cognitive behavioral therapy cause a setback?
It was kind of reinforcing that I should be doing these things and progressing with like this workout plan the physical therapist had given me, that I should be progressing with it. And in the end, the only thing they ended up helping me with was, because I had memory loss, I was forgetting where I put things. I was losing my keys. I was losing my work badge. I was losing things. And so she's brainstorming with me ways to remember that. And I thought, I don't need a therapist to help me brainstorm ideas like this. And the helping me with the working out was causing me relapses. So it just seemed it was a very short-lived experience.
I think it's important that we distinguish between the CBT that you received and how it was framed compared to what I'm sure the majority of people think about cognitive behavioral therapy in the context of a chronic illness, where it's about adapting to having a chronic illness.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the CBT you experienced, it was framed around trying to overcome poor beliefs or erroneous beliefs about your health.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's very, go ahead.
And by increasing your exercise, that was the other part of it, to change your thoughts and change your behaviors, and you'll get better.
Right. It was very much focused on that. And as a person, I'm extremely optimistic, happy, positive person. And so them telling me to work out, again, I'm a person who loves to work out. So this was kind of like music to my ears, but then, and they were encouraging me to do so, but then I would do so, and I would just end up with a relapse, which would cause me to be in bed for an entire weekend. It came to the point where, like, even something as simple as like thinking what I'm going to eat for dinner, I would have to think about how much chewing is involved in that. Like, I went from exercising at a high intensity level to, okay, can I just have oatmeal, because chewing a sandwich is going to be too hard for me to chew, because that's just going to take energy I don't have. I mean, it got from one extreme to the other extreme.
That's a really hard thing for people who have not had ME or have been really sick with a chronic illness to understand, how, like you describe, having to choose what you're going to eat for dinner based on how much effort it'll take to chew it.
Mm-hmm. I find it odd myself. I mean, when I think about it, I mean, before I got sick, I never thought twice about what I ate or the fact that there's energy involved in eating my food. You know, you think of food, energy is going in, but it even sounds weird to me now, but when I think of myself when I'm in those moments of relapse, chewing my food is too much, or even keeping my eyes open just to watch TV is too much. It's just too much stimulation, or in the case of chewing food, too much energy is being consumed that sometimes I feel like I'm losing more energy than I'd be gaining by intaking the food. So for a while there, I actually lost quite a bit of weight, just because I was too tired to get up, and even if it was just getting up and going grabbing something that was already made, that was too much energy. But then also then the fact of chewing it and swallowing it and all of that just became too much, took too much energy. It just wasn't worth it.
Right. So that you're fairly sick at that point. If you're having to weigh how much energy it's going to take to chew food, that's pretty ill.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happened then?
I basically, at some point, so I went to law school and I'm a lawyer by trade, so research is kind of my thing. So I just started doing a lot of research on the internet and learning on my own about the illness and learning about all the um, misinformation that was out there about that, and the myths and the, you know, I don't even know quite the right word for it, but learning what really I should be doing rather than what I initially was told. And that really made a big change for me in my health. I stopped pushing myself to try to exercise, because I was having, and I still occasionally have this, where I have what I call blackouts, where I think I must just be getting so exhausted that I will black out, and you could pound on my door, you can call me 100 times, and I will not hear any of that for hours. And then I will come to, and it's like coming out of this deep dark hole, and I will feel like a semi hit me, and I will be just as tired, and I will feel terrible. And it just, like, that has decreased a little bit because I've stopped trying to do some of the things I was originally told to do by some of the medical professionals I went to, such as exercising, was probably the biggest one.
So that must be very frightening to you're having these blackouts, which sound like unconsciousness to me.
Mm-hmm.
How were
Yeah,
you dealing with that?
it was very scary because I mean, I call them blackouts. I don't know what really was going on, but, and it never would happen when I was out in public. It's like I knew it was coming on, and I would know, like, lay down now and just, you're gonna just let go, because you know you put on this public face and try to hide as many of your symptoms as you can, but when I come home and it just all kind of goes downhill, and I know I can just let myself relax and not put on any kind of persona of health or anything. And that's then when that would kind of hit me. But it was very scary because I always thought, what if something happens and, you know, people are pounding on my door or something, and I'm unconscious and I can't be woken up, you know?
Yeah, sounds very frightening. So you're on this program of exercise and CBT, and that's making you worse. And because you come from this research background, being a lawyer, you started to do your own research, recognize that that's the exact wrong thing to do for this illness, and started resting hard.
Yes. So the turnaround for me, there's two turnarounds. One is stopping those two things. That really helped quite a bit. It's decreased the blackouts quite a bit. They're very infrequent now. But the other problem I still had was the post-exertional malaise, or PEM, was that I was still doing too much, because when I felt good, I would do what I need to do or think like I should get a lot done today because I feel somewhat decent or decent for what was my new norm. And I would do a lot of things. And then the next day I would just be in terrible shape. And so learning to pace for me has been really, really hard because I've always been an incredibly motivated person. When I went to law school, I graduated with top honors. Like everything I do, I want to try to do my very best. And for me to really slow down and realize like every email doesn't have to be answered today. Every task doesn't need to be done today. And just accept that. That's still something I'm learning and hopefully getting better at every day, but things can constantly throw a wrench in those plans. But that's probably my biggest downfall right now is just not remembering to pace. So now for my day-to-day life is whenever somebody asks me to do something, I have to look at my current day or the day before the event, the day of the event, and the day after the event in order to see if I've got my buffer zones to rest up for it, and then look into the event to see if I'm going to have enough energy for it or if it's going to cause me more harm than good. And sometimes I go into something knowing that it's going to cause me to relapse, but I kind of weigh it out and decide whether or not it's worth it. And for the few occasions that I do say it's worth it, I do definitely end up paying the price the next day for it.
And paying the price, what effect does that have on you?
That typically would mean the entire day laying on my couch. If I'm lucky, I can open my eyes and watch TV. Otherwise, it would be going to bed that night for about 10 hours, going downstairs to my couch and laying on my couch until the end of the day. And like I said, if I'm lucky, I can watch TV. Otherwise, I'm just going to listen to TV that's softly on in the background. Eating, again, depending how bad it is, becomes optional or very minimal because of the preparation, the cleanup, the chewing, all of that. And then when it's time to go to bed, I go right back up to bed and basically I've done nothing productive for the day, which that's something too took some acceptance for me to understand that doing that is that self-care is productive. And that was something that took me a little while to accept that that's actually productive, and that helped me kind of get through the feelings that I had an unproductive day and what a waste it was. Now I look at it as, okay, that was a productive day. I took care of myself. I did what I needed to do. I'm, in better shape for tomorrow.
Right. So it sounds like the sort of willpower and the habit of training physically and working hard at your career, you had to use those same skills, but in a very different way. So with the physicalness and with pursuing your career, when things got tougher, you just tried harder.
Mm-hmm.
But now the smart thing to do when things get tougher is you need to rest to be able to do anything.
It's a completely different mindset. Yes.
And so you're still managing to work as a lawyer during this entire period of time up till today?
I am, though I have a work from home accommodation because just the every other day I work from home because just the act of getting dressed, showered. I mean, some days just getting up and dressed and taking a shower, that's used all my energy for the day. So working from home every other day gives me a little bit more time to sleep in before I have to start my work day. I don't have the stress of a commute and the showering, the getting ready, putting on the happy face, which that does actually take quite a bit of energy to, have people come up to you as a manager and be happy and cheerful when you really are in a lot of pain.
So how is it working out with your employer, them having to accommodate your illness?
I think the first challenge I had was because here in America they call it chronic fatigue syndrome, and to a lot of people that just sounds like I'm just really tired. And there's so much more to it than that. That I've stopped calling it that, and use the more medical terminology for it, because it's not just fatigue. It's like fatigue is one piece of it, of so many other things for me. That was a real struggle at first for them to accept that this isn't just I'm a little tired and I need a nap kind of thing.
Yeah, so the term chronic fatigue syndrome really sort of belittles the actual disease itself. So it sounds
Yeah,
like you had to do some education of your employer.
absolutely. Yes.
And so you're also involved in the ME community. Tell me about that, and how did you get involved, and what are you doing?
So I'm doing quite a few things. A couple of things. So I have done some volunteer work for the CDC with revamping some of their myalgic encephalomyelitis documentation for providers and
And
caregivers and such.
and who's the CDC?
Oh, I'm sorry, the Center for Disease Control.
Okay.
Um, and then I also do some volunteer work for a very active state organization, not the state I live in, but another state. I do all their social media work to help raise awareness of their um, events that they have related to this illness. And then me and some other people here in Minnesota formed a nonprofit called the Minnesota MECFS, or Myalgic Encephalomyelitis / Chronic Fatigue Syndrome Alliance, to help support people in Minnesota that have it, because so many people are so isolated with this disease. I'm considered to be on the mild end, but there are so many people that are in the moderate or severe end that are completely housebound. They rarely leave their house, or they're completely bedbound. And we want to find those people and help them. Without there being medical support in Minnesota, we want to at least do as much as we can and let them know and give them hope that, hey, we're doing as much as we can through this organization to educate medical providers, get more doctors in our community that at least are aware of it enough to diagnose it, so that someone doesn't have to go through what I went through of a year of doctors not even having heard of this illness, or bringing it up as something to explore, hopefully saving them a year of going through that and a year of money, and time and all of that of going through that. Um, so I do that. And then I also write a lot of articles, both to Minnesota newspapers and then blog articles about what it's like to live with myalgic encephalomyelitis, to create awareness in the public about this disease.
Wow. So you're keeping yourself very busy when you're supposed to be resting hard.
I know. The writing, though, actually came it started as very therapeutic for me, actually, because I started out just, the biggest thing when I first got diagnosed, I actually, after being flooded with all this misinformation, I actually went out into the middle of the woods at a cabin and sorted through all of it and realized what was said in one of the books I'd brought with me was that I was grieving. And I had no idea that that's what I was doing. But once I read that, it made perfect sense. Because I was losing so many things that were important to me. I was losing working out, which is really important to me. I was losing an active lifestyle because I'm much more homebound than I used to be. I actually used to do a lot for my parents, who obviously are much older than me. um, and used to help them out, and we've kind of had a role reversal, even though they have some needs as well too. They actually have become my caretakers again, because I'm not able to do some of those things, such as grocery shopping and things that you don't think take that much energy. But like, I never thought grocery shopping took a lot of energy, but boy, lifting things off the shelves into the cart, out of the cart into the grocery bag, and then home and in the cupboards, that is just exhausting for me. That's something I've kind of given up on doing permanently, I think.
Yeah, I hit the grocery store this morning too, and my arms were getting tired from pushing the cart around. And as soon
Hmm.
as I got home, I had to lay down for about half an hour, and then I could unpack the 2 bags of groceries.
Yes, I hear you.
So you talk about grief and loss. Mostly folks, when they think about grief, they think about when they lose a loved one. But you talked about it in the context of losing your love for athletics.
Yeah, it was that, and it was kind of like losing the life I had known up to that point. I lost a lot of friends, which was really shocking to me because I thought these people were my friends. And once I got a chronic illness, all of a sudden, I would say 2/3 of them were gone. They were my friends that were there for me when let's go out and have a drink after work, let's go do this, let's go do that. But once I couldn't really be so active, um, most of them just left. So part of it was that lifestyle, those friendships, the working out, like just so much that was a part of my life just all of a sudden disappeared with this illness. And the friend part was the one that really caught me off guard. But just to have all of that be gone all at once. And now I feel like I'm at a place where I've replaced a lot of those things. So things I never thought I would do as a very avid workout person, but now I do gentle yoga or chair yoga with senior citizens, and I actually really enjoy it. I do meditation, and again, that's something as someone who works out a lot and is like a doer, I thought I would never get into, and I love it. So I've really been successful in kind of transitioning those gaps that I now had into some positive things. And I actually feel like it's in some ways, and this may sound really weird to say to some people, but getting this chronic illness in some ways has made me a better person because I think my pre-life, I was very motivated and focused and had all these goals, but they were really like my own personal goals to move myself forward. And now my goals are more focused on things that affect a broader group of people beyond me, especially through my work with our nonprofit and my writing articles to create awareness in the public. It's to help people beyond me, and it's not just goals that are, I certainly have goals for myself, but a lot of my goals now are more outwardly focused.
Wow, that's quite the transformation. And I think for a lot of folks who have never dealt with a chronic illness, that must be really hard to fathom how having a chronic illness can make you a better person. I recently interviewed a woman who has stage 4 ovarian cancer, and she said, the gift of cancer. She was having the same sort of experience as you had, that there's, she found this other community and she was doing something very meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm very interactive with a lot of Facebook groups and interact with people with various illnesses, mostly people that have myalgic encephalomyelitis, but a lot of them, I find they're just like the most compassionate, amazing people. And I feel like what Emmy has done for me has made me more of me, because I've always been someone, I'm the kind of person who's like the friend that is always listening to the other person or listening to, and is there for people. And I think that one is perhaps why I lost a lot of friends, because I was the listener and now I was the one all of a sudden with the problem and needed the listener, and my friends were the talkers, not the listeners. So that may have played a part in it, but it's just, I feel like it's brought out the best in me, like my best characteristics. I'm able to use them more. I'm able to be more compassionate to people because I have a more understanding of what it's like, because I'm personally experiencing it myself as well too now.
So what do you think your future holds? And what are you planning for your future?
Well, my biggest goal right now is still pacing. I still feel like I could achieve a bit better state of health if I pace myself better. But I feel like all the things I'm doing are so focused on raising awareness for the cause, and that I just have a hard time giving it up and not doing something that's going to help other people, that I'm probably doing it a little bit at a sacrifice of my own health. So I'm still working at trying to strike a balance between achieving those goals, those outwardly goals, but also making sure I'm taking care of myself and that's something I definitely am getting better at. But I've had a few, including a house fire, that's kind of thrown a wrench in all of that. But I think that also in a way was a good experience, because that is life. Like, you can pace yourself as much as you want in your life, and then something can happen that totally throws it off, and you still need to figure out, how do I pace and how do I take care of myself? Because kind of like that phrase is, put on your drawing a blank on the word, but your mask when you're on an airplane,
Oh,
oxygen mask first. Yes, like putting that on first for yourself. And that's the phrase that I kind of keep sticking in my head, is like, I need to make sure I'm taking care of myself, because that actually is helping other people, is making sure I'm okay first and
right.
stop being selfish.
To be able to help others, you need to be well enough to help others.
Exactly.
So a lot of folks with ME are often looking for different treatments, trying different things, off-label medications, for example. What, if anything, is next on your list of things to try or pursue?
Well, currently I'm looking into going to Stanford University so I could have my first real experience with a doctor that knows what ME is. That's unimaginable to me at this point. Um, but the main things I've tried recently was low-dose naltrexone, which has been very positive for me, no side effects, and it's given me a slight amount of energy that to probably anybody else makes no difference, but to me, it's gotten me through some days. Um, and then a friend just got me trying curcumin. I might be saying that wrong, but it's a supplement. Um, and I don't know if it's making a difference yet, because I've just gone through a month of being in a fire and a fire aftermath, that I think the extra stress might have outbalanced any effect I've gotten from it. So I'm still giving that a chance to see. But at this point, I don't really have anything else on my radar yet, because I feel like I'm taking a lot of supplements at this point, and I really don't know if they're doing any good. I know the low dose naltrexone is, but as far as the other ones, I mean, it's like a vitamin. You don't really always know if they're doing good unless you're getting a blood test to see if you're low on something. So I just keep watching things that come out, and learning and reading about new things that are coming out, just to see if it might be a viable option for me. And then if it is, I pursue it a little bit and see what other people are saying.
Great. Yeah, a lot of folks have had improvements with low dose naltrexone. I know I have been on it now for a couple of years, and I a few months ago went off of it thinking, well, maybe it's not helping me. But then my sleep got a lot worse. And
Mm-hmm.
so I came back on it about a month ago, and I'm sleeping a lot better, but it's still kind of crappy sleep.
Yeah, oh, most definitely. I have a sleep monitor, and I look at it every morning, and I can see throughout the night there's not an hour that goes by that I'm not waking up for at least a minute or two, which explains why I wake up in the morning and I'm so exhausted. Is I'm just not getting a deep sleep. It's just constantly somehow being interrupted throughout the night.
Have you been tested for sleep apnea?
I have, yep. When I went through the whole sleep study, I was told that I have what's called spontaneous arousals, which is basically unexplained periods of time throughout your sleep that I am waking up or coming out of a sleep stage, briefly waking up and then going back into a sleep stage. Um, but they don't have a cause for it. They just told me that you do it more than most people do it. Um, but they couldn't tell me any reason for it. And that was kind of at the point where they put me on a bunch of medications to try to get my brain to shut down at night. Um, and that just caused more problems than it helped. So I ended up coming off of that medication.
Well, that's just a sleep study for folks with ME is just begging to be done because so many of us have sleep problems. Well, Lisa, thanks so much for chatting with me and sharing your story. And I hope your future holds what you want it to hold. And I think it's really inspiring that you've already, considering you've only been sick for 4 years or so, that you've already made that transformation of of viewing this illness as sort of a gift, or there are gifts within it if you can find.
Right.
Yeah. Thanks, Lisa. Have a good day. Rest hard.
Yes, I certainly will be after this.
Well, a big thanks to Lisa for sharing her medical error experience and for the work she does advocating in the community. From the good news department, I was texting recently with Lisa, and she said that she had started on a new medication which has really improved her quality of life, and her Stanford appointment has been bumped to a sooner date, so she's excited that she's going to be able to get in there and see some specialists. You can find Lisa on Twitter, and her Twitter handle is @Lisa Alioto. You can also read her blog, realisticoptimism.org. You can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, and other podcast platforms. If you'd like to become a monthly supporter of Medical Error Interviews and help us increase awareness, go to patreon.com/medical error interviews to sign up to be a monthly patron. If you need the support of a counselor for your own medical error experience, or dealing with chronic illness, or LGBT issues, or any other life's challenges, you can book an online video counseling appointment with me through my website at remediescounseling.com. Thank you for listening to this episode of Medical Error Interviews. Be kind to yourself and others.